want to ask you a question. Is there such a thing as a perfect kill shot placement on a white-tailed deer? Have you ever seen online where they take a photo of a deer and they put a grid of lines over it, make little squares, and they ask you which one would you pick? What is the perfect shot? Now, they're asking for your opinion. What I'm wanting to ask you is there a 100% scientific perfect shot placement that can answer that question totally, with no exceptions? I believe there is, and it's one of my missions in life is to bring that example and to give understanding to you and the hunting community where that is, so more animals that would have been wounded instead are killed. Now, we're going to start out by using a paper plate as an example. If we go back to that grid of that deer and we asked you where to shoot on that grid, that deer, where you'd shoot, and we had 10 of your friends with you, you would probably come up with basically 5 different answers is what I would guess they would do, okay? Now, let's take a look at this paper plate. If I put this paper plate out at 50 yards up on a backstop and had you all shoot it, where in the paper plate would you shoot this? All 10 of you would say you'd shoot at the center of the paper plate. And I would ask you the question, why? Because if I shoot at the middle and I miss high, or I miss low, or I miss right, or I miss left, I could still hit the paper plate. So in other words, you're shooting at the center of the paper plate to give you the largest target possible. And what I have done through my research is really very simple. I have found where the center of the vital organ group is. And from the result of that, I'm teaching where that shot is on an animal depending on the various angles we shoot at. Because we know we shoot on the ground horizontal, we shoot up in a tree at vertical angles, the deer twists, and we shoot at compound vertical, rear-facing, forward-facing angles. So this is going to be a journey. There's going to be a lot of explaining, but when you're all done, you're going to learn something, I believe, that's going to help you put more meat in your freezer, and we're not going to give meat to coyotes. Okay, here's how we're going to start. I'm going to ask you a simple question. You tell me where you would shoot this deer. You tell me what you think the perfect shot is. And obviously the graph, you just come over, the numbers on the bottom. So let's say you believe you should shoot him here. You come over F on the top, follow that line down 2. So the answer would be F2 or 2F. So I want you to pick that out, because when we're done with this, I got a little bit of a trick that we're going to be able to show you to make it kind of interesting, I think, where the spot is that I came up with and why. So let's have fun. Okay, what I did is I turned our pattern around, and a little comment I better make is if you look at its head, this is not a white-tailed deer. This is a black buck, and the reason I'm using a black buck is I have beautiful photos I'm going to be able to show you that are going to illustrate why I choose the spot that I do, and it's going to be very informative. And this was shot by Ted Venecia in Texas. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build this black buck anatomically from the inside out. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the organs on it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the liver on here. Okay? Okay, here's our liver. This is a blood vessel that goes directly from the heart to the liver. The liver is the only organ that is fed by both a vein and an artery. And the liver holds a tremendous amount of blood, I believe, compared to any other organ, which is why they claim it gives it the liver color. This here is the kidney. And this little piece that's here, next time when you get a deer, you take a look at it, it's a lobe. It's called the caudate liver lobe. It fits right up underneath that. It just perfectly fits up against the kidney like that. Okay, the next organ we're going to add is called the mediastinum. Now, I've been corrected that the mediastinum is not an organ, it's a tissue. So I call it an organ. It's a matter of semantics, but it is one of the most important things that you're going to learn when shooting that you want to be able to hit. Okay? Next, we're going to add the diaphragm. Okay, now if you notice, I have the diaphragm covering the liver in the front, but not in the back. In actuality, the diaphragm covers all of the liver and you don't see it. The reason I'm leaving it exposed here as I'm wanting you to be able to see where the liver is in relationship to the lung, because that's very, very, very important. The liver is attached to the diaphragm on the inside, in the middle of the deer. It's attached there. The diaphragm moves back and forth, and it goes when the ribs go out, it pulls back and it flattens out. When it goes forward, it domes in, and so the shape of the liver varies depending on the breathing process when you shoot it. So sometimes this liver may be totally covered up by the lungs. Sometimes it may be more exposed. Okay? Next on the list is the mediastinum. Okay, the mediastinum is very important, as you'll learn later, but the mediastinum separates the right lung from the left lung. The whole cavity that the lung sit in is called the thorax cavity. Each cavity by themselves is called the pleural cavity. It's attached to the backbone on the top, to the sternum on the bottom, and it's attached to the diaphragm in the back. And this is super, super, super important to understand its function and where it is when you're making a shot with a bow and arrow. Okay? So next we have our pink lung, which we're all very familiar with. Okay, a few quick little notes. I want you to see how the lung is in front of the diaphragm and the liver is behind the diaphragm. I want you to notice the shape of the lung, how it descends downwards, how much bigger the lung is in the back than it is in the front. The shape of this lung here, this is what I call the wing of the lung. The inside part of the lung, because remember the lung is dome-shaped when it's during the exhale process, so the actual inside shape of the lung follows that diaphragm shape in here like this. That's how come the lungs do not go like this all the way across. At this far back, the lung is only 1/8 of an inch thick. It comes right to a point. In fact, when they breathe out, those lungs can move forward. That's how come I cannot make a perfect lung that's going to be the way it is all the time, because they move. Okay? So the other thing is I want you to see how at the bottom swoops up. And it's very important when we're trying to find the perfect shot where we're wanting to make, is you take a look at the shape of the lungs. Very important point. Do you see how the farthest back point of the lungs is also the highest point of the lungs, and from there it descends down? Different animals have different shaped lungs from their rear high point as they come forward. Like in a pig, instead of coming down this deep, it will come down here and it will cut across much higher. Even though it's attached to the diaphragm is attached higher on the rib cage on a pig than it is on a deer. They're very little things, but they're extremely important to know where the perfect kill shot is on different species of animals. Okay? Okay, the next, we're going to add the heart and the aorta, which is the largest blood vessel on an animal. It's an artery that pumps the blood from the heart to the rear of the animal. When it bifurcates and it goes forward, it's the bronchocephalic trunk, and that's the one that sends the blood forward on the animal. Next, we're going to add the spinal column, the first rib in the sternum. Okay, next and lastly, we're going to add the shoulder bones. Now, the shoulder bones consist of the scapula or the shoulder blade. You see this masking tape I put on the top here. This represents cartilage on the top of it. Technically, if I was going to reproduce this permanently, I'd actually fiberglass there and have it cut out. But I just put tape there, and it's going to work for our purposes, what we're doing today. This is the humerus here. This elbow, which they call the olecranon, and this here where they juncture together is called the glenohumeral joint. Okay, and the only reason I'm saying these terms, because who cares, but this is very important in archery, because all the organs we're putting on are what we want to hit. We're trying to make fatal shots by hitting the most vital organs possible. But that's an additive process. The deductive process is the spinal column, the sternum not so much, but then the shoulder bones. These are very, 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 very critical. In fact, if we take a look at this here, do you see this triangle that's formed here? That's what we call the devil's triangle, because this moves, and many, many deer have been shot and wounded because people tried to make perfect shots, but because of these bones stopped the arrows, and it ended up wounding the deer. That's how come when we answer what is the most perfect shot on a deer, that's where we're going with this. So we're going to put this on now. Okay, do you remember how I started this by talking about a paper plate? That if you put a paper plate at 50 yards, you and your buddies, where would you shoot it at? And I said everybody is going to shoot in the middle of the paper plate so they can miss high, low, right, or left and still hit the paper plate. And all that I'm doing here is trying to find out where the center of the vital organ group is on a deer. This as a particular is a black buck. Now I want you to think of this. The heart, lungs, and liver represent the vital organ group. That's what we want to hit. The liver, you can argue questionably, but it is a vital shot. What I want you to think of is all the skeletal structure here, these bones, and these are the actual shoulder bones that actually came from Ted's black buck, and the spinal column, which is here. I want you to think of all of those is an out-of-bounds line. In the same way you play football or tennis, there's lines. In any sport, I guess there's lines you can't go out of bounds. So think of everything where there's bones that's out of bounds, and take a look at all the organs that are inside here, and think of them now as a paper plate that you want to hit the center of. The difference between these organs here and the paper plate, there's numerous ones, but primarily what it is these organs are three-dimensional. They're not flat like it is in the paper plate. So for right now in this video, I'm not going to get into the three-dimensional shooting of it because that gets it complicated, and it's first we're going to start out with having, if it's perfectly broadside at ground level where you would want your arrow or your bullet to hit. Because what my goal is this, for the perfect shot. Now I'm going to start doing some teaching. My goal is to give you the largest target possible on the animal to shoot at it, so you can miss and you can still kill the animal. So it dies within 200 yards. That's what my goal is. So this is the scientific question. Where can I hit or shoot at an animal at that point and gives me the largest circle? We think in circles when we think of archery. Gives me the largest kill zone so that I can miss my mark and still kill the animal so he dies within 200 yards. Okay? That's what we're trying to do. So now I want you to take a look at this and think, where could you put your arrow in this here where you could hit in the middle of this and you could still kill the animal? Okay? Now the first thing I want to show you is if you look forward here, people want to shoot them in the heart. The problem with the heart is it's in the devil's triangle. Yes, the most fatal shot that you can make is where Ted made on his black buck, where you actually hit the blood vessels off the top of the heart, because the heart can still pump. The muscle's not been hit at all, and the largest blood vessel is this aorta, which goes forward and goes backwards and goes forward. So this black buck died in 13 yards. And you know how long it took that black buck to make 13 yards? Because of what I'm guessing, 2 seconds. I mean, they're lightning fast. And whoop, 1, 2, boom, and it was down. Because that's why I call it the fire hydrant. You hit the fire hydrant and woof, it just explodes with all the water. In this case, all the blood coming out of it, okay? That is, if you want to have what is the perfect kill shot, an argument can be made. The fire hydrant shot is the quickest kill shot there is. The problem is it's surrounded by bones, and it does not give you the largest kill area possible. So, and that's why everything I'm going to say, I want to qualify. I want to be scientific. I want to be perfect at what I'm saying to the best as I can be. I'm a human being. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to bring facts and science to this, not opinions. So yes, the first fact is taking the aorta off the top of the heart, besides hitting it in the spine or a headshot or something like that. But as far as a target area to shoot at, hitting the aorta on the top of the heart is the quickest kill you can have, but it gives you a much smaller target. And even worse than being a smaller target, aim small, miss small, is the fact that you could cripple the animal, because when the animal drops, you could hit him in the shoulder blade, okay? Or you're taking a longer shot in the leg. Actually, he goes backwards in the elbow here. The humerus pivots up, and you end up hitting this bone here. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at what I call the perfect kill shot, and I'm going to explain why I believe it is. Okay, this is getting really fun. I'm kind of excited to show you this, but Now we're getting into exactly where the exact spot is that you should aim scientifically. So I know all these numbers, it kind of looks confusing. So if I explain them to you, it's really very simple. Okay. First off, we started with, and I've got the photos to show how I did this on the dead animal, that it's 10 5/8 right behind his front leg, right where this green line is here, where it turns into white going on up. It's 10 5/8 from the top to the bottom. I made a special tool system for that. It's very important. I then found what half of that measurement is, that 10 5/8, which is like 5 5/16. And I actually drilled a hole in the rib of the animal before we started working on it. So I had a permanent reference there, because when we're saying where to shoot, you see all this here, you don't see this in the live animal. What is your reference? Well, if we can reference the dead middle of the body, you see where the animal is, where the middle of the body is, that can tell us going forward or back, up or down, okay? So the next thing I did is going from the top down, I measured from his back all the way down to the bottom of his spinal column, the bottom of his vertebrae here. That was 2 7/8 inches. I measured from the bottom of his belly, or his sternum, well, this isn't the sternum, but right, the flesh, the hair right below the sternum, I measured up to the bottom of the sternum, and that was 1 1/8 inches. So the distance of the height of the thorax cavity directly behind the leg is 6 5/8 from the bottom of the backbone to the top of the sternum. You see how the heart's actually fitting down there? That the sternum actually sits in like a rounded V. So that's how come I've got the sternum up higher, because the heart can actually sit right down in there, okay? Now, if you go, very simply, halfway up between the top of the sternum and the bottom of the backbone, that gives you the exact middle, which is why my analogy of the paper plate, if you go halfway from the top to the bottom, you go in the dead middle, that's exactly what that gives you. Now the question is, how far up is that from the bottom? Well, look at what we did. We figured it out. It's 42% exactly of the height of the deer from 10 5/8 gives us exactly to where that center spot would be. And this is, now I'm a human being, so there's things that are off here because I did it. So I'm not perfect. But my system's done correctly, and I spent years and years studying this, so I know I'm very close, but I come up with 41 and 42% quite common. So this is exactly where you should aim. Now you're thinking, well, how do I know if that's the height there? How do I know I shouldn't have been more forward or more back? Okay, so let's take the paper plate analogy, and let's take this. This is a piece of clear acetate, which has a hole in it for me to put a pin in. And I'm going to take this here, put the pin in that. I'm going to go right there, exactly where I believe the center of that should be. Okay, do you see that? That gives you the paper plate as big as it can be on this black buck, where you can shoot at that point and you can still go back and hit lungs. You can still go forward and hit lungs. You can go high and go under the backbone. You can go low and still end up hitting the sternum. Yes, this is in the way, but that is something on a black buck in particular. Their olecranon is taller than a whitetail, and like a pronghorn antelope, it sets up higher than the body. So you could catch me there, that's the exception. But that gives you right there, scientifically, the largest target possible on the animal that you can miss and still kill the animal. Okay? Now, let's go back to the fire hydrant shot and let's see what we can do there. Okay? The fire hydrant shot, as we know, is very popular because people like a quick kill. So if we go in there with this here, I put this in here. I'm going to take that one back out a little bit. Put that in there because that pin's in my way. Now take a look at where I've got to fit this in here. So that gives me about right there, seems to be centered. If I can get my head over there, about right there would be the perfect center if I'm shooting at the heart to give me the greatest distance to go up to hit the shoulder blade and go down. And you can see where Ted hit his, I actually drew that there a little bit higher, but that's where he ended up shooting his black buck. And if you go back to the draw, or you go back to the photos, you'll see he did not have a lot of room where he could have went higher and he would end up hitting the spine of the, or he would have hit the rear edge of the scapula. Okay, so I want you to see the size difference between the fire hydrant shot and what I call here my perfect kill shot. And again, the perfect kill shot is defined as the area that gives you the largest target possible that you can hit within it, and the animal will go less than 200 yards. That's the goal that I set up when I was trying to do my research. That's what I set up I wanted to find. I believe that's it. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to do something interesting. I'm going to take these two places here, and I'm going to poke a hole through these. Okay, I'm going to make these come out perfectly straight. In this door, you do want to keep the video going here. This is going to take a little bit, but I want to be able to have this whole thing done in live time, because what we're going to do you remember we started out this video with a grid, and I asked you to pick what you thought would be? Well, I've never done this on this before, so I'm going to find out just like you will. I've done all my research. I've got this put together. I'm going to take this off the wall. This pin is pushed all the way through till it hits the garage door. We're going to take it off and turn around. That's going to show you to literally a pinpoint perfect, according to my anatomy that I put on there, where the target would be to give you the biggest target possible if you want to make the perfect kill shot, or the largest target possible if you want to make the fire hydrant shot. Okay? So I'm going to take this off. We're going to turn this around. We're going to spin this in live time. I'm going to hold this. And there's no holder ahead of time. So I'm going to hold this. And I'm going to push that one through. And I'm going to push that one through. Now, I don't have this level on the garage, so I'm going to hold it by my eye what's level. But if you take a look at that, I don't even know what number it came out. It was no consideration to me. I've never done that ahead of time. But that will show you on the first side of an animal exactly where, and all these that I did according to the measurements, the best that I could take, because I measured on Ted's animal. I took all these measurements on the actual animal. So, yes, you could say, how perfect am I? Well, my goal is to be as 100% as perfect as I can be. But I guess a goal of being as 100% perfect as I can be is probably 90%. And one of the main reasons is, no matter how good I get at what I'm doing, I'm studying a dead animal and not a live animal. So that right off the bat makes a difference. Studying the heart is very difficult, because the more I start taking the organs apart, the heart starts pulling itself right on up like a rubber band as the organs are taken away there. So, but that's why I'm on the Perfect Kill Shot Documentation Project, because you cannot argue. If you have on video where the arrow went in, where it came out, you take the animal apart and you dissect it, and you see exactly what organs it hits. You can't argue that. And that's why I'm on to try to find the answers, knowing that I don't have the answer, but together you can help me, and we can make a difference of putting more meat in the freezers of hunters of families, family of hunters, and less food for the coyotes. And for me personally, I don't like seeing deer being wounded, because I've raised them and I have a love for white-tailed deer. I love the meat. I love hunting them. I love killing them. I love eating them, but I do not want to cripple them. So that's what this is all about. We just put two little chartreuse stickers on them to make it stand out where the pins are. And we want pinpoint perfect. Well, this is T-pin point perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it back over, show you the organ side, and I'm going to show you the size difference between the fire hydrant shot and the perfect kill shot. Okay. Okay. Can you see that there? This shows you how much bigger of a kill zone you have by aiming back here. Basically, what I want to do is have you hit the deer as far forward as you can, where you stay away from, this is called no man's land. This is called the devil's triangle. This is called the out of lines, out of limits. That's why if you can just come up right behind that elbow, right down from the back of the scapula, if you stay right there, that gives you the largest target possible without hitting these bones. But the reason we don't want to go back farther, you say, look at all this lung here, why don't we shoot back farther? There's a reason. This lung is not always back this far. This lung can go back farther if it hyperinhales, But a lot of times, on exhale, the lung can actually go forward, so that center point of these lungs could actually go forward more. That's how come I've had to split the difference to being as close to the bones as I can, the stay away lines, yet not being back too far where I end up hitting them, where you can end up going in the guts and the liver. Okay, pretty cool, huh? Okay, we're done.